There's been a lot of propaganda about Gaddafi. Can you clarify the good and the bad of the man?
Absolutely.
Misrepresented, please.
Yes, without a doubt. Particularly when he started out, he came through the military. He got rid of the King Idris. He was very young. I think he was 27 when he came to power, and he was very popular. Revolutionary. Really wanted a pan-Arab independence. I think his pan-Africanism came much later. So in the early years of his rule, in fact, he was very aggressive toward neighboring African countries south of the Sahara in terms of his own imperial ambitions. But it was only years later that he realized that you needed a United States of Africa, not only for the African continent, but for Libya itself to survive independently. So it was a learning process for him. Toward the latter stage of his life, he became a much better leader in terms of his Pan-Africanism. In the beginning, yes, he was also very imperial toward African countries south of the Sahara, and very destructive as well. But as he realized that Pan-Africanism was really the only true solution, he started sharing the benefits of the oil wealth with other African countries. He certainly put a lot of it back in the Libyan economy. In fact, I remember watching an interview on CNN where one of the people who was cheering for Gaddafi to be overthrown, this is before it had been overthrown, was interviewed by CNN. So why do you hate Gaddafi? And she said, I hate him because he gives our money to Africa. In other words, she didn't see herself as a part of Africa. But of course, Gaddafi was promoting a Pan-Africanism that would include North Africa as well as the rest of Africa south of the Sahara. And if you go back, the actual details of why he was really overthrown and killed has now emerged. And the most interested party was France. France, even though it's let go of its former African colonies in West Africa and in North Africa as well, it still has like a tight grip by virtue of controlling their economies. Their currencies are tied to the French currency, and their reserves were kept in the French central bank in France. So in other words, they're independent on paper only. Now, Gaddafi was going to undermine that by creating an African currency backed by Libyan gold. And he already put aside, I understand, about $6 billion to support this new currency, which of course would have eliminated the need for French franc or the West African franc, which was tied to the French franc, So they saw this as an existential threat to the survival of France's own economic well-being. So he had to be eliminated. That's one part. And then another part that came later was this president that was supporting this really aggression to get rid of Gaddafi, Emmanuel, I forget his first name now, Sarkozy, Nicolas Sarkozy. Gaddafi actually loaned him money to run his own campaign in France. Of course, he denied it, but very recently, some years ago, he was tried in France and he was convicted on a corruption charge that he actually did take the money. So he had a vested interest in silencing Gaddafi. And they vogue these high moral things. How do you go to prevent somebody from, quote unquote, killing his own people by bombing the country into the past century, which is what they've done. And then they abandoned the Libya that they put in that condition, right? They didn't go to help repair the economy, to make sure they put security in place so that the Libyans can actually now enjoy the fruits of the so-called new Libya that they wanted to create. I have conversations with many comrades, and they say they really don't care. They don't mind that an African country is destroyed, right? They don't mind, because they really don't want an African country or African countries to emerge as a rival to the West. So it makes sense to have them in a constant, perpetual mess. So long as you can get the essential resources that you need, you can get the coltan, you can get the cobalt, you can get the copper, you get all the oil you need from Nigeria or Angola, you get all the gas you need from Algeria, or now they're building a major plant in Mozambique. It doesn't matter if there's political violence, if there's chaos, if there's destruction in those countries, so long as you get the resources. And in Libya, of course, they were banking on getting the oil. In fact, there's a very interesting story in Newsweek magazine. Before Gaddafi was overthrown, the Treasury Department had a law which prevented American companies from doing business, right? You can only do business with an official government in place, right? They waived that law so that these guys that were being supported by the West, even though they were not yet in power, right? They started signing oil deals with Western companies. Think about that. Signing oil deals with a government that is not yet in place. That is in Newsweek, not in some radical publication, but in their own corporate, media. So if you follow all the facts and information, you'll find that there's no truth that they were going to intervene to create a better Libya. The facts just don't bear out. And by the time Hillary Clinton ran for election, what did she say? She said, I had nothing to do with Libya. I just gave Obama advice. He's the one that ultimately made the decision to go in. Of course, had Libya not just collapsed and become this failed state, she would have taken credit for it and ran on that ticket during her campaign. But during her campaign, she did not want that photograph to be shown again when she rushed there and took that photograph posing with the new people that they put in power.